All right, so I'm sitting here with Kathe, Dr. Kathe Supavong. Don't want to forget that doctor. You spent a lot of time and money on that.
Yeah, money, yes,
yeah.
and time too.
So Kathe is a friend of mine, and she's also a general. What do you call it? A general
practitioner,
general
PCP.
practitioner.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, tell me a little bit about your kind of what you're doing now and with your practice and how you got there.
Yeah. So I am currently doing a model of primary care called direct primary care. And it's essentially cuts out the insurance, cuts out the middleman. And for my services, you pay a monthly fee, like a membership. Okay. So like a doctor membership. And you have all access to me. So accessibility is a big issue, I think, in primary care nowadays. Like I hear it all the time. You know, I need to get in to see my doctor, but I can't get in for 2 months. So that's one of the reasons why I switched, because I want to be more accessible to my patients.
Yeah, I think it's silly that with the doctor-patient relationship is one of the few relationships where, first of all, you're spending a lot of money, or at least you're spending money on insurance, and insurance is spending a lot of money, and yet you don't have, like you said, you don't have access, right? Like if your lawyer or your plumber was the same way as your doctor, I mean, you would fire them, right? But for some reason, we've just said, okay, well, I'm not allowed to talk to the doctor. I need to talk to a nurse who talk to a receptionist who talks to a nurse who talks to the doctor and stuff. But yeah, so you guys are trying to kind of avoid that whole problem.
And so part of that reason in my old practice, why you had to go through those steps was just we were consistently, like I felt like I was on a hamster wheel, like seeing so many patients a day. It was typically around 35 patients a day. And so you barely had time per visit as far as just to get through the visit alone, let alone answer any calls or look at any follow-up labs afterwards. And so I just, number one, I was angry all the time. You know, I was like, just like that constant stress from the business side of it, not necessarily the patients. Like I loved taking care of the patients and educating them. And so I took my time, but because of that, I was consistently running 2-3 hours behind on my appointment, which obviously like patients don't like either, because you obviously don't want to go to like a 2:00 appointment and don't see your doctor till 5, right?
Yeah. And then there's those doctors that are like, you have to be here within 10 minutes of your appointment. I'm like, okay, well then if at 10 minutes, if I'm not getting medical care in 10 minutes, I'm walking out.
Yeah. And then you sit there and you wait. And
I've done it once. I've actually walked out.
Yeah.
I'm like, where are you going? I was like, well, you said 10 minutes. And like, well, you're supposed to be. I was like, oh, so I'm supposed to, but you're not supposed to?
Yeah.
No, I'll reschedule and just
so consistently in my old practice, started off the visit, I'm so sorry, like calming them down, apologizing if they hadn't left already. I had a decent amount of patients that had already walked out. It just wasn't good for me. And so this type of practice, we have fewer patients. And so I don't have to see 30 in a day. So my typical, obviously I'm just starting out, so I'm not as busy as say like another direct primary care doctor, but typical day for most direct primary care docs is you have on the schedule between like 3 to 4 patients. And so you see 3 to 4 patients a day, but the rest of the time you're either working people in that need to be seen right away, so you can see people same day or next day.
So if you schedule like at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, then if somebody just walks in off the street or someone calls you have some time to fill in.
So for example, tomorrow I have 2 patients coming in. They're both new patients. New patient physicals I usually do between 2-3 hours for, just getting to know them. And then my partner he started this type of practice 16 years ago. And so I am learning.
Well, that was insightful.
Yeah. So I'm learning so much from him.
Yeah,
but
that's awesome.
One of his patients called just before I left today, and where I'm going to see him tomorrow in between those patients. And so that's the whole point of it, is accessibility. And like today, I only saw 1 patient, but I was on the phone, like texting with them back and forth, just getting things done that they needed or answering any questions. So it's great. It's great for patient care. It's great for like my life. With this type of practice, I've been able to actually drop my kids off at daycare. Like I haven't been able to do that. The
do interviews in the middle of the afternoon. Right?
Come do a video podcast. Yeah. So it's been great. Very good for just not just patient care, but like personal self, like qualities, life satisfaction type thing.
So I want to kind of talk. These numbers have always intrigued me. So obviously, if your partner's been doing this for 16 years, he's figured out how to make money doing it, how to like be able to continue to pay rent and keep the lights on and everything.
Yeah.
But then you were saying at your other practice you were doing 35 patients a day.
Yeah.
So how can you go from 35 patients a day to, well, I know you said you scheduled 3 or 4, but maybe let's call it 8, maybe. I don't know. How many patients would you say you end, like what's this normal? Like you schedule 3 or 4, then you have a couple walk-ins, you have a couple phone calls. So,
yeah,
so I don't know, let's call it 8 to 10.
Yeah.
So how do you go from 35 to 8 to 10 and still make it a viable business?
Yeah. So the current model, which is the typical practice that most people are used to, the doctor or the business, or the practice doesn't really get paid unless you physically come in for a visit. Okay. So it's called I guess I forgot that.
Oh, so term. It's artificial.
Yeah, and so it's called, essentially it's sick care, The doctor doesn't get paid unless they actually see you, okay? And so with this type of model that I'm doing right now, like my goal, like you can see me, the patient can see me all they want. They can see me as much or as little as they want. And so if like for the same monthly fee, they can see me every single day if they wanted to. And it is the same price as if someone were only to see me 2-3 times a year. But it's that 24/7 accessibility to your doctor. If it's like 6:00 at night and the office is closed, they have my cell. They contact me. And so, and most patients are very respectful. Like they don't just call me at 3 a.m. saying, "Oh, I need my med refills." Like they're respectful. You have that relationship with them.
Well, yeah, we have such great communication tools that we didn't have just a few years back between texting and obviously texting and email have been around for a while, but now that we have smartphones that are really easy to type on, we can use those things and actually use them for something beneficial instead of just annoying people with spam. So
and it's really cool. Like I can actually literally pick up my phone right now and send a prescription for someone to the pharmacy, like without having to wait on the phone to talk to a pharmacist. Because CVS and Walgreens, sometimes like getting a hold of someone is just the whole automated system. And so now I can just send it and it'll be there. And again, if the patient doesn't get it, if something happens, they can just text me and then I'll get on the phone with the pharmacist. So
have you, what is it? Verta Health. Have you heard of Verta Health?
I have. That is that's Peter Attia's company, or as far as he's part of.
Is he part of it?
I think so. He's. It's probably is it the online company that works towards getting diabetics off their medications and treating them naturally? Yes. Yeah.
And they've been super successful, and they have some crazy goal. They're like they want to cure 50 million. We can talk about what is cure, what is not cure. I mean, it's really even hard to define what diabetes is. Some people define it as just. I guess, what is the medical definition of diabetes?
Okay. So diabetes.
Like HB.
So there's a couple different forms. So there's diabetes type 1, diabetes type 2.
Okay,
right?
yeah. So like we're talking type 2.
Okay,
like,
so
what
type
are you
2,
looking at?
Type 2 is essentially
HbA1c or?
Yeah, hemoglobin A1c. And so that is essentially the number that is the average of your blood sugars over the last 3 months. And so the
because you're essentially measuring the level of glycation on the red blood cells.
Yeah.
Right? And they live for about 3 months.
3 months, 180 days, yeah. So 6.5% is the cutoff number where you are actually diabetic, or you are officially defined as diabetic. And so...
that's pretty high, right?
Yeah. So let me tell you exactly what the average blood sugar would equal to. I have this little calculator on my phone.
Like as far as milligrams
Yeah.
per
So
deciliter.
because a lot of times you'll say, 6.5%. People don't know what that means as far as actual blood sugar levels. So that means your blood sugar on average is 140.
Yeah, that's high.
Yeah.
That's really high.
That is high. And so once you have that A1C of 6.5, you're diabetic as far as in the medical community. Okay.
Is that the sole? Is that kind of the sole indicator, or
No, that's just the easiest one to use and measure. Now, fasting blood sugar greater than 200. No, sorry. Any blood sugar greater than 200 technically qualifies you as diabetic as well, or fasting.
Like even if it's postprandial, like if at any time it gets
if at any time your blood sugar is higher than 200, and then fasting blood sugar is higher than 120. Now you give them a little slack, like say on 2 separate occasions measured.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things that affect, like if you're stressed out, if you don't get good sleep, your cortisol levels are high. Like cortisol will bump your blood sugar up. So
absolutely.
Do you guys do any OGTT?
Yeah, that is actually one of the things that. So my partner, again, who's had this type of business for 16 years.
Oh, I'm sorry, just to back up, oral glucose tolerance test.
Yes, so where you take your blood when you're fasting, and then you drink this super sugary drink. The actual glucose that is in it, I don't remember the number.
I can't remember. It's either 50 or 75 grams.
Right? Yeah. So I think it's 75 grams that we use in our office.
Okay. I think they've tried to figure out how to do it with 50 to see if it's still as accurate, but
yeah. You got a friend there.
Yeah.
And then we measure your blood sugar 1 hour after you've drinking it, and then 2 hours after you're drinking it, to see your response essentially to sugar. And so that gives us an indication of how your body responds to sugar and how it processes it. But also if you're in the insulin resistance pre-diabetic stage or not, which actually is just as damaging as having diabetes. So anytime your blood sugar is elevated, it is creating damage, inflammation in your body. And so even if you're not diabetic, even if you're pre-diabetic, then it can create damage in your body. Okay.
Yeah. So I've heard a couple things. I've heard a couple interesting things, and this is more just like on the research side. So I know I don't expect you to follow every paper that gets published, but there's some stuff about LDL becoming glycated and not being able to bind with the cholesterol, with the lipoprotein receptors in the liver, and so it basically hangs around the blood longer and becomes oxidized, damaged, and then becomes atherosclerotic. Whereas if you have healthy LDL, they're constantly churning through, and you don't have those. And I don't know if that was Dave Feldman or somebody who was talking about that, but it's interesting theory that it's really the sugar that's causing the problems with the fat, right?
Yeah, so you can't really, I think it's a combination of factors.
Yeah.
And so yes, the longer that you are exposed to the LDL or the different types of particles, the more damage it can create. Also, the higher your inflammation in your body, that it's a cascade of events essentially. Yeah. And so if you have high cholesterol, and you have, so let's just say you have high cholesterol, but your inflammation is down. Essentially, it's like an inactive volcano. It's just there, doing its normal cholesterol things. And cholesterol, you actually need cholesterol in your body to synthesize hormones and things like that. But when you add in the inflammation, that's where the damage is created. And so now it's like, if you have a lot of inflammation in your body, it's like an active volcano, essentially, which once it erupts or the plaque breaks off, that causes a clotting cascade in your body, which can lead to blockages. So, interesting fact, a lot of people think that, you have heart attacks and strokes when you have like 85% blockage or more, which is what these, like the typical stress test for, is if you have decreased blood flow due to a blockage. The interesting part.
Oh, go ahead. So and then I want to come back to stress test.
Yeah. So the interesting part is the majority of heart attacks, actually, like 50% or more, happen from blockages that are 50% or less. And
really?
So it's the actual cascade of clotting factors where that volcano erupts, and then all the clotting factors happen, which causes.
So you're saying blockage in like a more of a major blood vessel, and then that causes a clotting cascade, which maybe blocks off a capillary down the line.
Yeah. So
because obviously you're not going to be like ischemic if you still have 50% flow, but you're saying that causes blockages elsewhere.
Yeah. So if that plaque happens to rupture, okay, then that will lead to a clotting cascade, which will block further down the line. Essentially, it's like something breaks off and then it snowballs.
Okay. So I hear this term stress test a lot. Mm-hmm. So basically, is a stress test just an EKG with an accelerated heart rate?
There's different types. So the most basic stress test, and again, I'm not a cardiologist, but I'm a family doctor, and so we see reports and send people to cardiologists all the time. But treadmill stress tests, typically they hook you up to an EKG and they stress you typically either on a treadmill, which is the most common type, or sometimes even on a bike. And so they'll look at the electrical system of your heart while your heart is being stressed.
Because it's more likely to show abnormalities with an accelerated heart rate.
And so, exactly. And so if you have that, if your heart's beating faster and your heart's pumping faster, you're more likely to have ischemic changes show up on the EKG.
Okay.
Again, 50% of heart attacks happen when you have less than 50% of blockages, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so that even if someone had like a normal stress test before, people have heart attacks all the time with a stress test that they've had within the last year. And so it's not the best test as far as screening, but it absolutely has its utility because it can pick up on those people that have 85% blockage, and then they'll get, the proper intervention to try to prevent that from actually leading to an event. So that is one type of stress test. The other type is you can also do a stress echo, where you have an ultrasound machine on the heart, mm-hmm. And same thing, you stress them either with exercise modalities, or if the patient can't exercise, which happens with a lot of our middle-aged older population. Chemical stress test, yeah. And then there's also the myocardial perfusion scan, where essentially they inject radioactive uptake into the heart, and then with imaging modalities, and then they give you something to stress your heart or you're exercising, and then they see increased or decreased uptake in the heart.
So what imaging is that? Is that a CAT scan?
So that is it's a nuclear stress test is what they call it. And so there's different levels based on your needs. So most healthy people, if they're just getting a screening stress test, would do like just the EKG and stressing your heart through exercise. If you're diabetic, you're normally going to get the nuclear stress test, which is more sensitive in picking up abnormalities of decreased blood flow.
So there's actually a company that's working on a deep learning algorithm that mm-hmm. can interpret EKG results.
Okay.
And they're making some pretty good success. So the idea would be that, because apparently they're really, really hard to interpret. I didn't realize this.
EKGs?
Yeah.
Without training, yeah. Yeah, there's just a lot of little nuances that go into reading an EKG.
Yeah, so there's something like on average, I think they said that the interpretation is only about 80 to 85% accurate. Mm-hmm. That some things are either false, false negatives or false positives in the interpretation. And so with this algorithm, they think they can get it to like 95 to 98%, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And the other thing is, you don't have to have a human look at it.
Yeah.
So they're actually using they're using like known results. So like they're using results that have been diagnosed by cardiologists or whatever, interpreted by cardiologists, and then they plug those into the this learning algorithm.
That's awesome. Yeah, so right now on most EKG machines, there'll be just the basic like normal or abnormality, non-specific abnormality of the ST wave, or so there'll be like a little reading, but again, same thing, like the doctor typically overreads it because so far the machines aren't as good. But if there's now going to be a big algorithm computing thing, then that would be.
So it was actually this morning. I had my I sometimes take like my heart rate variability with like a polar chest strap.
Yeah.
And I was like, does somebody make like is this data sensitive enough to produce an EKG? Like I don't know. I don't know what data it's sending, right?
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be pretty accurate.
Yeah. So with that, it's just measuring your heart rate, and so
it's just measuring peaks.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So heart rate variability is essentially
measuring peak to peak.
Yeah, like how fast or how slow your heart beats. And so variability is actually good. That's your body's response. And so if you have no variability, like that's actually not.
It means you're real stressed
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's not good. But EKG is looking at the electrical activity, not just how fast. And
so yeah, I think the chest strap itself at a hardware level is measuring electrical activity.
Yeah.
And then it's interpreting. And I think I don't think this chest strap directly interprets. I think the chest strap sends raw data to the phone. And then the phone makes an interpretation, sets a threshold of that was a beat, that was not a beat, that was some noise. We're going to filter that out. And we're going to, 57 beats per minute or whatever. But yeah, so anyways, that got me curious. I couldn't find an app that would do it. It's probably because it's not FDA approved or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
But on Amazon, there's an FDA approved deal. It's about like, I don't know, a little bit bigger than a stick of gum. It has 2 metal pads, and you put your fingers on it, and it is wireless to a phone, and you can do a EKG.
And that gives you an EKG?
Yep, for $100.
Interesting.
FDA approved. I don't know.
FDA approved. Well, yeah, I would need to look at that because right now, as far as to capture an EKG, like they have Holter monitors. There's just lead pads placed at certain levels of your body to measure the electrical activity from different spots. And so if you can do that from your fingers, I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but that's interesting. I mean, technology is amazing nowadays. And so I am not opposed to, like, I do think that something will be available soon, or probably is available. I just don't know about it. So. Okay.
So I don't know, more of an open-ended question. We have more information. We're more in the U.S. or across the world, Western civilization. We have more information we've ever had. We have more money than we've ever had collectively as a society, yet we're probably the least healthy we've ever been. What do you attribute that to?
Oh, gosh. So a huge part of it is lifestyle. And then there's multiple parts in that lifestyle. So the chronic stress from the I guess types of jobs, the sedentary lifestyle, so people aren't exercising as much, but a huge part of it is food. So the standard American diet, fast food, processed food, stuff that our bodies billions of years before, so our ancestors aren't used to eating. And so just within the last century, we've introduced this influx of processed foods that again our bodies weren't used to digesting before. And so and not to say that other countries don't, but you can kind of see it. And so whenever countries or cities get modernized, and McDonald's obviously follows, and so more people that eat fast food become unhealthier. I mean, that there's a pretty strong correlation to that. And so definitely our dietary choices have made us as a population unhealthy.
So I used to, I normally eat a low carbohydrate whole food, not necessarily ketogenic, but usually pretty close. Yeah. I mean, meat and vegetables is kind of what I eat.
And fat.
Yeah. Well, fat is dry. Try to keep it derived from meat and vegetables as much as possible. Try to do as much whole food as possible. Yeah. If I need some extra calories, throw down an avocado or a ribeye steak or something. Absolutely. But yeah, so I always kind of looked at carbohydrates and over processed sugars and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then I started hearing more and more about vegetable oils. And I don't know if we have a whole lot I don't think we know the whole story on vegetable oils yet, but the more and more I look at it, it looks like that could potentially be a major player in. So what are your thoughts on vegetable oils?
For sure. So vegetable oils are typically highly processed just because of the extraction process of it.
You mean you can't easily remove oil from corn?
No. Yeah, no. And so
love me some greasy corn.
Yeah, so it is a highly processed product. And because of it, when we ingest it, it creates a lot of inflammation in our body. So part of what I recommend to my patients when they're looking to get healthier is cut out the vegetable oil. So corn oil or canola oil, which has been touted as a heart healthy oil, is horrible for us. It's horrible.
Yeah, so some ones to look out for, right? Sunflower, safflower, soybean, corn, canola.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so unfortunately, like if you look at the bottles on or the label on salad dressings, the majority of salad dressings are going to be canola oil or...
Yeah. Here's something really easy. Go get a bottle of olive oil and a bottle of vinegar.
Yeah.
And you mix them together. Yeah. And it's called salad dressing.
Yeah, exactly. So Primal Kitchen is actually really, like, they're a brand. They're really good about trying to make healthy salad dressings.
Is that Mark Sisson's brand?
I don't know. I have actually no idea.
I think that is. I thought, because he does like the Primal's like his brand, right?
Yeah. So my husband Joe Chow, he was part of Urban Acres, which was like a organic food co-op.
We were members of the co-op.
Yeah, exactly. And so we've been eating, healthy, quote unquote healthy, and been food conscious. And so that's where I found out about this brand, Primal Kitchen. And so looking at their ingredients, it's great. It's great.
It's so funny. I noticed you did it and I do it too. When we say healthy, we have to put it in quotes or we have to qualify it as I eat in a way in which I consider to be healthy. People are very, very emotional about food.
Yeah.
If it's almost like sports teams, right? If you're like the Cowboys suck, they're like, oh, I hate you.
Yeah.
And people are like that same.
Especially here. Yeah.
Yeah. If you just go, you know what? I just don't know if corn oil is good for you. And people are like, you bastard.
So I think part of the reason why is that it goes against their beliefs. It goes against what they were taught growing up. And so our generation and our parents' generation, it was kind of advertised and taught, this is the Bible, that low fat is good for you. Like that is healthy for you. Low fat, vegetable oil is healthy for you. And so to go against that. And so what I teach my patients now is actually fat is good for you. Because it, number one, keeps you satiated, so you don't necessarily overeat. But it's essential for you. It's not bad for you. Whenever you take products and you alter them, that's when you get into, okay, now what does the food actually do to your body?
Yeah, and that's one thing. Going back to the vegetable oils, vegetable oils are all, or I'm sure there's some blends in there, but essentially they're polyunsaturated fatty acids, right? Yeah. So they oxidize. So they're like if you eat them in the food, like if you eat I would say even fish oil, right? Like, once you extract these oils, they don't have the natural cell structures and antioxidants and everything in them. They oxidize very quickly, and then that's what causes the inflammation.
Yeah,
right?
and so you want to. So fish oil is actually really good, but you have to be cognizant of the brand. And so there's no regulation on vitamins. Like there's no FDA approval of any vitamins. Like people can just put out stuff, and there's actually been studies done on vitamins as far as what they say they contain and what they actually contain. And there's so many vitamin companies out there that they don't contain what they say. And so fish oil is one of those where, yes, you want to make sure you get it from a good company because of that whole extraction process, oxidation component of it. And so what I found is typically that the brand is not good if you get that fish burp.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you get that fish burp, you should probably get a different brand. And so a couple of the good ones that I've run across, Nordic Naturals.
Yeah, I've heard some. Yeah. I feel like I've heard that several times.
Is a really
Nordic
good one.
Naturals. Okay.
Orthomolecular is another good brand, and I think they're more in like the nutraceuticals side. So you can get it on Amazon, but it's like, I don't know why the price is like triple what you get, say, like from my office, because we're part of like an online ordering system that has all of these good studied companies, vitamin companies on there that people can actually get their vitamins from. But they're a good brand. Actually, surprisingly, Kirkland brand, a lot of my patients, so the Costco brand, a lot of my patients don't get fish burp from it. And
oh, really?
So I actually think Costco has some pretty good stuff.
Well, I know their meat tastes really good.
Yeah.
I've had steaks from there, and I'm not talking like prime $30 a pound, but just your normal kind of steak, and they just taste way better from Costco.
I actually think Costco, and I don't know for a fact, but I think they really try to have good quality products. So.
Well, seems to be working out for them. They're doing really well.
Yeah.
So
the more, getting back to your question, the more that you manipulate naturally occurring things or foods, the worse it's going to be for you in general.
Okay, so if you're,
as far as in our food.
So if you have say 30 seconds, on an elevator to explain to people what you think is healthy eating, what would you say? Okay,
so person dependent, depending on what they have going on. I don't think I could actually do it in 30 seconds, but boiling it down, lots of vegetables. Okay, hold on, repeat your question one more time. Okay. So 30 seconds to explain what a healthy diet is, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess you're basically telling someone, quote unquote, what to eat. Okay. But really it's more about, because I started to ask this earlier when I said, we put healthy in quotes. Yeah. And
so anything you can grow, pick, or kill that hasn't been like manipulated or sprayed with tons of pesticides or chemicals. So more of a whole food diet, essentially hunter-gatherer type diet is what I would aim for, including a lot of vegetables, because fruits and vegetables, because that's where you get your minerals and vitamins from.
Yeah. So. Which I think is, okay, so there's a guy, I can't remember, is it Matt, I can't remember his name. It's like, it's not Matt LeBlanc. That was the guy from Friends, right? It's another guy. Anyways, but he's done these nutritional analysis of all these different foods, and he has these really cool graphs and everything. Mm-hmm. And I think we typically think of meat as being just a hunk of protein, but like it's got a lot of micronutrients in it. Absolutely. It's not devoid of micronutrients, right? It has just as much micronutrients as vegetables. Now, not the same concentrations and the same varieties, but yeah, so like getting some good, healthy animal products, I think is good.
Yeah, for sure. And especially when you diversify too. And so, we're used to eating, like, again, the healthy diet that was touted to us, and and even still now, chicken breast, right? Lean chicken breast. No, like you should eat the whole animal. I mean, that is what our ancestors did.
Yeah.
So that includes, and people might not be open to this, but heart, liver, those actually have a lot of, so the heart and liver, they have a lot of nutrition for it as far as getting the most nutrient dense, getting the more nutrient density from your meats would be heart and liver, essentially, as opposed to like muscle.
Right.
And so having that in your diet is actually really, really good for you, because of the nutrient density, but also CoQ10 is important for energy production specifically in our muscles, and
is that, and that's on the, is that on the electron transport chain?
It is. Okay. It is. And so when you can't make energy, or ATP, then your body doesn't function as well.
If you can't make ATP, you die.
You die, yeah. Yeah. When you boil it down, yes.
There's some crazy stat. Like your body makes like 6 pounds of ATP a day or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
So crazy.
Yeah,
so I mean,
it makes a lot.
I mean, just trillions. Like trillions to the power. I don't know. It's so much. It's hard to. You can't even really comprehend it. We're not really. Humans aren't really built to comprehend numbers.
Yeah, and so an example of that would be like, so statin drugs that people take for cholesterol. So that actually blocks HMG-CoA reductase, which plays a part in cholesterol synthesis. But
it also, there's also another pathway that reduces inflammation, right?
Yeah. And so that when people, there's an anti-inflammatory effect to statins. And so I don't think statins are bad. I think certain people need them. I forgot where I was going with this. So that actually, when people take statins, that lowers their CoQ10 level because it blocks that pathway. And so some people will get muscle cramps from it. And so if a lot of people, or anybody that I put on a statin, I also put on CoQ10, and then they can tolerate the medication fine. So muscle cramps is an example of your muscle not producing enough energy or ATP, and so again it doesn't function well. You can get muscle cramps, myalgias, muscle pain from it.
Okay, so let's go back to some different testing things. We talked about cholesterol a little bit. Do you guys do any advanced lipid panels?
We do.
Do you do like the NMR?
The
particle count.
Yeah, so most people are used to getting like just the basic cholesterol panels, which is
total
LDL, total, LDL, which is the bad cholesterol, HDL, which is the good cholesterol, triglycerides. Those are the main things. And so now more and more practices are actually doing this, because it's important. So now we're breaking it down into the type of particle. So small dense lipoproteins, and then the LDL particle, so the particle number and particle size, we're actually able to see now. And those numbers give us an idea of how in danger you are for having cardiovascular events. That helps us assess the risk.
Yeah, so I don't know, I wouldn't call it my hypothesis. It's just things I've gathered around. So obviously the higher particle count is more associated with,
adverse events. Adverse cardiovascular events. Yeah.
So this kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about the glycation and oxidation of LDL particles that prevents reabsorption by the body. So obviously if you have a higher particle count, you just have these things hanging around in your body longer. So it's almost like the high particle count is a proxy for the age of the molecules. Because I don't know, can we measure, is there any way to measure the age of have we gotten to that yet?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so Dave Feldman, have you watched some of this stuff?
Yeah.
So he's got, I think, some really good explanations where he talks, because basically LDL start off as a VLDL, right? And then, and so low density lipoproteins, or any lipoprotein, is essentially the body's way of carrying non-water soluble things through the bloodstream.
Yeah,
right?
it's needed in our body.
Yeah. So these lipoproteins, you know, his explanation is okay. Yeah. Because he's like an engineer, so he's looking at this from an engineering standpoint. And he's saying, okay, well, why do you have lipoproteins? He's like, oh, well, they carry fat-soluble vitamins, they carry triglycerides, and they carry cholesterol. All three things which cannot just float through your blood because they're like, if you ever put oil in water, you know, it clumps up, right? So they have to have a transport mechanism.
It's like a boat.
Yeah, it's like a boat. Yeah. So because the lipoproteins has a fat on the inside and a protein on the outside, right? And that's how it. So yeah, what he's saying is, okay, well, if everything's healthy, you basically have these VLDLs. They go around, they drop off their triglycerides, you know, throughout the body, and then, you know, at the end of the day, they don't have any triglycerides left. They maybe have some cholesterol, you know, dropping off triglycerides and cholesterol, and then your body reabsorbs them and you start over. So one of the things he was saying is that the more fat, and I've heard this from actually several doctors, the more fat that you're currently burning from adipose tissue, that like if you're fasting, or, you know, you just haven't had a meal in a long time, or whatever the case may be, if your body's releasing a lot of fat from your adipose tissue, it actually has to produce more LDL in order to circulate that energy throughout your body. Yeah. And so a friend of mine was like losing a lot of weight really fast. He went keto and he's losing a lot of weight, and his LDL went up, and his doctor was like, oh yeah, this happens whenever you lose weight rapidly, your LDL goes up. So he's like, we'll just wait till you kind of level off and then we'll check it again.
The LDL or the LDL particle?
Well, this was just a standard panel.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm rambling a bit here, but yeah, I think it all kind of ties together because if you look at the particle count, it seems like it's almost like a proxy for age of the particles, which would make sense that it's more atherosclerotic, or, you know, causes more associated with events, adverse events. But yeah, I don't know. Have you kind of looked into any of that kind of stuff that Feldman and those guys are working on?
Has your friend gotten rechecked yet? As far as, I'm assuming he's sticking with this diet for a while.
I don't know.
Because he
hasn't given me an update on his panel. I know that he hit some milestone, like a 36-inch waist or something like that, or like sub 40 waist. Or I think that's what his doctor said. What is the
So goal for men, I think, is less than 40 inches.
Yeah, what's the metabolic syndrome? So it's waist circumference, it's triglycerides, high triglycerides, low HDL, is blood hypertension's in there.
Yeah, and then waist circumference.
I think we missed one, but yeah. So if you have three,
and high blood sugar, maybe. I don't.
Yeah, I think it is. It is. Yeah, so he had, I think he had 3 of those, and so like once he got his waist under 40, he's like, all right, no more metabolic syndrome.
Yeah. So I bet you know, and I haven't had this experience with my patients because, again, the type of practice that I'm in now, I'm still like a baby in. Like, I've only been at this new practice for like 4 to 6 months, 4 months full time. And so in my old practice, I didn't have the healthiest patients, unfortunately. And I don't know why. Maybe it was just the town, or just, again, with that type of practice, you don't focus on preventative care as much, and so you don't have healthier patients. And so I didn't have that experience as far as, I mean, even to just educate people on the type of diet they should be eating. Like, again, the max that if I were to stay on time, like 10 minutes would be the max that I'd be able to spend with a patient. And so to be able to go over dietary stuff plus their medications plus whatever they actually came in for was hard to do. And so I don't have experience. Now, as far as seeing people on a healthy diet or a ketogenic diet and their response to it. And so as far as back to your question of having these higher particle counts or even higher LDL after a ketogenic diet, will that kind of equilibrate out the longer that they're on the diet? I think from what I've heard from other podcasts with what other people have experienced, yes. And so one guy, I forgot what his name, I think it's Dr. Berg. He is actually a chiropractor that specializes in weight loss. And one of his patients actually did the ketogenic diet, lost a lot of weight, got his blood checked, and his numbers were actually worse. And then he was like, let me stick with this a little bit longer, and then checked it again 3 months later, and they were way better.
Well, and that's the other thing is, like, I feel like for some reason, and it's probably because of the statin industry and because of there's so much fixation on LDL, which there's just not a lot of not a lot of science that says. I mean, people with low LDL have heart attacks. People with high LDL have heart attacks. Where like the really good correlations are with HDL and triglycerides.
So those are the numbers that I actually go off now.
Yeah.
Is the HT or the triglyceride HDL ratio and those actual numbers, as well as inflammatory markers, because inflammation is really the trigger, and so you want to control inflammation, whether that's coming from diet, whether that's coming from like a subacute infection or an actual infection. So whenever people are sick and they want their blood work tested, I'm like, hold on, let's wait until like a few weeks after you're feeling better.
So I think I mentioned this to you, but I try to, as often as I can when I first wake up, do sort of basic. I weigh myself. I test my blood sugar. If I'm ketogenic, like I'll test my ketones, but those strips are expensive, so I don't do it a lot.
For like $1 a strip.
Yeah, and that's if you find them on sale.
Yeah.
I do my blood pressure, and I do like HRV, heart rate, and stuff. And it's amazing. You can see if I don't get good sleep, blood sugar's up, blood pressure's up, and yeah, just negatively impact. But I think it's pretty cool because I've got essentially 2.5 years of data.
Yeah.
And at least, I would say on average, I mean, sometimes I'll do it every day and then sometimes I'll go a month without doing it. But I pretty much have 2.5 years. Yeah. Which, okay, so I'm not soliciting medical advice, but I'm asking for a potential explanation.
Okay.
I used to have super low blood pressure.
Okay.
Like 90. So I'm going to kind of ask two questions on this. Used to be like mid 90s over mid 50s.
Okay.
And then it kind of got to where it was more like 120 over 80. And now like I'm kind of in that like 130 over 90. And I don't feel like I feel good. I haven't put on weight or anything like that. Yeah. So that's kind of what...
Tell me what's wrong with me.
Anyways, yeah, because I don't want to turn this into like a medical diagnosis.
Yeah.
But that got me thinking to say, okay, what causes high blood pressure? Yeah. And I was having this conversation with somebody, and it was a nurse actually, and she said, well, there's a lot of risk factors. I'm like, no. I'm not talking about like, poor eating decisions. I'm talking what is the proximal cause of high blood pressure? Is it constriction of the blood vessels? Is it hardening of the arteries? Is it kidney
it comes down
problems?
to vascular health and the flexibility of the vessels, essentially the arterial walls.
So can you almost always? So I guess there's other causes too, but is that like almost always kind of associated with increased blood pressure? Is the
Yeah, there's a strong correlation. Yeah. Okay. And so I'd be curious to see. So there is a way to actually look at or at least a snippet of your arteries and see how healthy they are. It's called a CIMT, and that stands for Carotid Intima Medial Thickness Test, and it's an ultrasound. They usually look at your carotids, and you can see... number one, if there's any plaque buildup, which if there is, then obviously you have atherosclerosis going on, which you have the disease process of cholesterol building up on your arteries, which can lead to heart attacks and strokes, specifically strokes in your neck.
And this will show up sooner than like a calcium score,
yeah, for sure. So this, you can actually tell if the plaque is hard or if it's soft. So soft plaques are actually more dangerous. And so if people have soft plaque, my goal is to like cool it down, put a cap on it. And so number one, it'll tell us if you have plaque and what type of plaque it is. But number two, it also tell us your vascular health. And so the thicker your arterial wall is, likely the higher your blood pressure is going to be. And likely the worse off your vascular health is. And so That test is actually pretty accessible now. As far as have you ever had it done?
No.
Okay, we can set that up later
Right.
if you want. The nice thing about it is some companies actually will give you a vascular age. And so the more flexible or the thinner your walls are, obviously the younger your vascular age is going to be.
Is that based on average?
That's based on average US, like in your age group.
Well, I hope I'm at least 10 years younger than my chronological age, if that's the case.
Yeah. And again, there's multiple things that go into blood pressure, not just vascular health. And so same thing, like stress can obviously make it go up. But yeah, I'd be curious to see what yours looks like.
You know what? Actually, I need to compare it against when our son was born.
What is the trigger? So yeah, I mean, because you said you've been doing this for about 2 years, right? And your son is 3?
He'll turn 2 in a week or so.
Yeah. So being a parent is hard. It's amazing, but it's also you're not sleeping well. There
is no such thing as sleeping in.
No.
Ever again.
Yeah. So I thought, like, whenever I see like friends who actually don't have kids and they come and they're like, "Oh man, I'm so tired." I was like, "You don't know what tired is." Like, I thought I was tired. So. I have a 4-year-old.
It's like, I don't care that you got 4 hours of sleep 2 nights ago and last night and you slept for 3 hours, I'm not letting you sleep in.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
Yeah. So I have a 4-year-old and then a 1-year-old. And right now the 1-year-old is going through like a sleep regression, probably because of teething. But I was up last night. It was like
the teeth and the vaccinations.
Yeah. So 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5. And then I think he fell asleep in the bed with me at like 6. It was just so sleep obviously affects your blood pressure. Stress affects your blood pressure. Fluid balance in your body can affect it too. And then so I don't have an answer for why your blood pressure is higher, but
I just thought it was an interesting thing to talk about. So actually I've started wearing a Fitbit too, which it seems like it does a pretty decent job at tracking sleep. I'm sure it's not as accurate as going to a sleep study, right? But where they're measuring brain waves and whatnot. But I think it does a pretty good job, and I'd like to see. I haven't checked to see if there's a way you can extract that data. Yeah. I'd like to take all that and throw it into Excel and see how that all correlates together between blood sugar, blood pressure.
That'd be interesting. That would be interesting.
And then I also have my HRV.
Yeah.
So I can check my HRV, correlate that against sleep and everything. So
define HRV.
Heart rate variability.
Okay. Yeah. So that'd be interesting. Now, there's also different monitors or machines out there that'll check and see if you're, in REM sleep versus like. Yeah, but those are like expensive. Yeah, those are typically at least $200 or $300. So. Yeah,
and I think, like I said, I think it does a pretty good job. Just from, like sometime when you'll wake up in the middle of the night and watch TV for 20 minutes and go back to bed, and and it shows up that you woke up and went back to bed.
Or more commonly, you wake up in the middle of the night to go use the bathroom, and then you look at your phone. And then you stay on your phone, or that light, actually, the light that is emitted from your phone, it actually sends signals to your hormone cells, specifically the melatonin, and shuts it off.
Yeah, suppresses melatonin.
Yeah, and so.
So did you know that there's? Have you heard about how there's a much lower occurrence of cancer in blind people?
No, but
so they have very high melatonin levels because they don't have optical sensors, right? Yeah.
Do they sleep better?
I don't know, but there's actually reduced occurrences of cancer in blind people. So
interesting.
Yeah, get your bedroom dark.
Yeah. Or even if you can't avoid looking at your computer screen or something, say if you have a job where you actually need to be on your computer and you're doing it at night, they actually have these glasses that block the blue light that is emitted from your computer screen or phone screen. So, and that should help you get to sleep easier and things like that. So actually there's a study out there, and I can't quote what study, but daylight savings time. When that happens, when you lose an hour of sleep, there's actually a higher incidence of cardiovascular events.
Yeah.
On that date.
And more, that's like the most car accidents of the year.
And vice versa. When you gain the hours. Yeah. And so it's just interesting that 1 hour can make that much of a difference. And so sleep is important.
People
sleep
that are right on the edge there, push them over the edge.
Yeah. Sleep is just very, very, it's one of the healthy lifestyle things that you want to that I try to recommend to patients. And again, I mean, life gets in the way, kids get in the way, but you do the best you can.
So what are some other blood markers? Because you've talked a lot about inflammation. So the only one I ever can remember offhand is CRP, C-reactive protein.
C-reactive protein. And so what I would recommend patients get is actually high sensitivity C-reactive protein.
HSCRP.
Yeah, HSCRP. And that is going to be more sensitive as far as picking up inflammation. ESR is another generalized one, but I don't typically check that just because the HSCRP will give me a lot of info. Myeloperoxidase is another one. LPPLA2 is another one, and those specifically are more geared towards inflammation in the arterial walls.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be, so if you did like you said
LPPLA2 or
LPPLA2?
Yeah, and
okay.
I don't know what that stands for.
In my head.
It's like L little p big P LA-2.
Okay.
But that specifically measures inflammation more in the arterial walls, and then same thing with the myeloperoxidase. And so whenever I see like a panel come back on a patient and say all three of those things are elevated, then I'm more worried, or my oh shit meter is higher as far as, okay, this patient is at higher risk for something happening probably soon, so I'm going to be more aggressive in them, maybe even get them into a cardiologist if they have, just depending on their background and medical history and things like that. But there's a lot of things that can play into inflammation. So at one point when I was training for my marathon, my inflammatory markers.
Oh, yeah, I imagine.
We're up. And so I had a heart workup because the doctor who saw me, I mean, they were like, oh, no, but it was fine. And so there's a lot of transient inflammatory elevations too.
So I take it for granted now that I at least have a somewhat understanding of what we mean when we say inflammation, because obviously people know, like when you slam your finger in the door, it becomes inflamed. I think people understand that.
Yeah.
And so for a while, I kept hearing inflammatory diet, inflammatory process, and it just, to me, didn't make sense. I was like, what is inflamed? Like what? Yeah. Like what are you talking about? Like it seemed like just like a vague thing. So when you talk about when we talk about like these inflammation or inflammatory markers, kind of like what is that in the body? Like, I mean, it's obviously has to do with the immune system, but yeah, can you talk about that a little bit so we can?
Sure. So usually it is the chronic, like all the time inflammation. And so inflammation is like a cascade of things happening in your body, essentially, all these signals being set off. And so people with, say, like rheumatoid arthritis, right? They have a lot of inflammation in their body because, rheumatoid arthritis is a autoimmune issue where your body is actually literally attacking its own joints.
And that is in the cartilage. So it's basically the immune system is attacking the cartilage, which causes. Okay, so when we say inflammation, we don't necessarily mean swelling, but in this case, you do mean swelling, right?
In this case, it's swelling. And so you can have like a sub-level of inflammation where people don't necessarily feel it, but those cascades are happening in the body and it's signaling other things to happen.
And it's also cumulative, right?
It is.
Like you could have 4 or 5 different insults that are adding up together to put you in this state, right? Yeah. So like if someone has rheumatoid arthritis,
and so
maybe getting rid of one lifestyle thing doesn't help them, but getting rid of 2 or 3 in a combination could help.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's that chronic low level stress. And so inflammation in general is good. So when you exercise, you get a quick burst of inflammation that upregulates certain pathways in your body, and then it calms down essentially.
And it's almost like you can think of it as a signaling at that point, right? It's telling your body like, hey, we don't have enough, if you just go and you do squats, you know, it's telling your body like we don't have enough muscle tissue in the glutes.
And so that's
build more muscle tissue.
Yeah, and so that's how your body actually grow. That's how your muscles grow. That's how things heal. When you get an insult, say like you bump your knee on something, you'll get inflammation. It will send signals out to help calm down that inflammation and then repair that tissue. So there now a lot of times, like I don't recommend anti-inflammatories right off the bat for people that get injured, because you want that inflammation to take place so that the signals happen to where your body actually heals itself. If you dampen that, it'll actually, even though you might feel better short term,
take longer to heal. Yeah,
and then it can possibly become a chronic problem like tendinopathies. So tendinopathy is essentially inflammation that has happened in the tendons. A lot of people will get it like in their shoulders, like with the rotator cuff muscles, where there is actually no more inflammation happening, no more healing happening. And so a good treatment for that is actually PRP, or regenerative medicine, where you actually inject platelet-rich plasma that you draw out from the person's own body, which creates inflammation and then therefore restarts that healing process. And so in that time when you do the injection, so I'm sports medicine trained too, so I have a little bit of knowledge of that. And so in that time when people do the injection, I'm like, do not take any anti-inflammatories, do not take any aspirin, because you want that process to take place so that your body can try to heal itself again.
Yeah, I feel like
it's a balance.
I feel like I have a propensity for that. Like I feel like every acute injury I have results in some sort of chronic something or other. Yeah, like I pull a hamstring, and then 6 months later, like I've got some pain in it and I have to do some ART or like do some sort of stretching or something but yeah, I feel like all my injuries end up in some sort of long-term tendinitis for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So inflammation is good in pulses. It's that chronic long-term stress that can cause issues. So same thing with stress. Stress is actually in pulses or in bursts is good for the body. That's how you grow.
Yeah.
But chronic long-term stress is really bad for the body.
Yeah, and I don't think that's another thing that I don't think I used to feel like it was a little bit kind of a fuzzy topic, and it's just like, oh well, stress this, stress that. But yeah, I mean, if getting like being stressed plus lack of sleep, I mean, if you I don't know, I'm just trying to kind of give an order of magnitude here, but like if you have a really stressful job or really stressful life and you're only getting 4 hours of sleep a day, I think you may be better off. Like I think you may be worse off than someone who smokes a pack of cigarettes. I mean, I feel like it's that serious. I feel like it can negatively impact your health that much.
Yeah, for sure. So.
Okay, so what other, is there anything else you guys like look at or test, kind of just generally speaking, obviously?
So vitamin levels are actually huge. So I think we maybe touched on this the first time around when we tried to do this podcast.
Yeah. In my lack of experience, and I lost the file.
It's okay.
I didn't lose it.
It was like a preparation for the real one, I guess. So vitamin D levels are actually.
Oh, and I thought we were supposed to drink wine on the second one. Were we not?
Yeah. Where's the alcohol? Specifically.
Bottle, right.
Break it open. So vitamin D is actually very, very important, and actually. Vitamin D plus K2 actually is good for vascular health too. And so people that...
Because K2 is really good about...
reallocating calcium.
Yeah. So instead of putting it in your veins, it puts it in your bones, basically,
yes,
right?
It takes it to where it needs to go. And so if someone is just on vitamin D supplements and they have high blood pressure, or they have cardiovascular disease or plaque buildup, then they need that K2 as well. And so they should think about maybe getting a supplement with K2 in it, not just the vitamin D.
So is plaque reversible?
It's hard to reverse, but I'm not going to say it's not reversible. So it's hard to do it. I think with more studies, it can actually be shown to be reversible. There's not a lot of evidence for reversing plaque at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, there's not really. I mean, it's not like losing weight or something like that, where it's a designed mechanism of the body for, like, energy storage. So my goal when I get these advanced markers, especially in younger patients that don't have any plaque buildup yet, like, my goal is to have them not build up any plaque. And so some other ones that are some other markers that we look at are genetic risk factors for cardiovascular disease. So specifically LP. So LP little a is a genetic, essentially a genetic risk factor that puts you at a higher risk. If you have high LP little a, you're already at a higher risk of having heart attacks or strokes. And so knowing that, then same thing, I'm going to be more aggressive on the patient, especially if they don't if they have disease, yes, but especially if they don't have disease, to try to prevent them from building a plaque in the first place. And so I'm kind of doing an experiment on one of my patients, because he's young, he's in his 20s, but he has genetic risk factors and he has family members. He has a strong family history of cardiovascular disease. And so his carotid test was negative. I didn't really check anything in the heart yet because he's young and likely it'll be 0. But I'm putting him, even though one of the other genetic things that I check is ApoE, which looks at your body's ability to is this patient
process.
Is this patient a 4-4 or
they're
a 3-4?
They're a 3-4. Yeah, they're a 3-4. But I'm actually putting him on not necessarily like a full ketogenic diet, but a modified ketogenic diet, because he's also got like some weird maybe like MS symptoms or just some weird neurological symptoms going on.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing an experiment in him to see, putting him on this kind of higher fat diet and see if it's actually going to affect his blood marker levels. And the carotid test, we actually repeat every year or 2 years. And so I can see, if his vascular age is worsening, then I need to change his diet.
Interesting, the MS thing, and then also Parkinson's. I've seen some studies where, like, just I don't know if it was an administration of exogenous ketones or whatever, but basically, essentially, if you have ketones in your blood, your brain has an alternative fuel source, and is just gonna function better. I mean, it's like almost so obvious you don't even have to prove it through scientific experimentation.
Yeah.
It's like if you have glucose and ketones, that's probably gonna be better.
Yeah.
But 26% reduction in Parkinson's symptoms.
Yeah.
On a ketogen, or when in ketosis, or exogenous ketones.
Yeah. So the ketogenic diet historically was actually used to control seizures before there were anti-epileptic medications.
And it's still used for drug-resistant seizures.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, well, when the drugs don't work, let's just maybe try to change their diet.
Yeah, and so obviously...
It's pretty rough, though. They're going like 90-10, right?
Yeah, it's hard. But, I mean...
That'd be like just basically be eating like straight butter.
Yeah, or drinking a cup of olive oil. But, I mean, that goes to show that it has a beneficial effect on the brain and the neurons in the brain, and the energy sources. And so it's interesting that Alzheimer's, which again has a genetic, you have a genetic predisposition.
ApoE is
one of those. Well, so if you have 3-4 or 4-4, you're going to be at a higher, especially 4-4, you're going to be at a higher risk for Alzheimer's. And so, so that's interesting. So you're also going to be at a higher risk for having atherosclerosis and higher absorption of dietary fats. And so,
it seems like they could both be tied back to insulin sensitivity.
Yeah.
Glucose tolerance.
Yeah. And so I
wonder, I'd be curious to see that, like a study of healthy ApoE4 patients and how their glucose tolerance and also insulin sensitive, like, are you familiar with Dr. Kraft, who did a bunch of work with insulin sensitivity? Actually, you should look into some of the stuff he did. So, because he was saying that even before stuff starts to show up on an oral glucose tolerance or any sort of glucose tolerance or any sort of blood sugar problems, you start to get insulin problems first, because obviously your body's trying to keep your blood sugar level. And so as your body has a harder time keeping it level, it's going to produce more insulin. And so your blood sugar is going to look normal, but your body's, 2, 3, 4, 5 times the insulin that it should.
So ideally, and I've actually thought about this, so traditionally we just check glucose, but it would be interesting to check insulin along with the glucose too.
So Dr. Kraft came up with these with specific protocols, and he has these different profiles where he looks at sort of like a glucose response curve. He has an insulin response curve, and he's kind of separated them out into different people. Like, these people are, he has different names for them, like high early responders and this and that. Did a ton of work in that area. It's produced some really good stuff. So obviously insulin is difficult to measure.
But that's actually one of the things that we measure on our advanced test too, is insulin, fasting insulin specifically. And so if your fasting insulin is high, you're insulin resistant, meaning that your body does not regulate sugar well, essentially. And so a lot of my patients are trying to lose weight. And it's hard to lose weight when you have a high amount of insulin in your body, because it also stores
it's anti-catabolic.
Exactly. So the fasting. So here's another topic. So in order to help,
I didn't know if I wasn't going to put you on the spot with fasting, but
in order to help get the insulin levels down in my patients that have a high fasting insulin level or are insulin resistant, I do recommend intermittent fasting, not just for the weight loss effect, but there's a whole bunch of good.
And there's just so we're clear, there's kind of multiple definitions of intermittent fasting. I think I know which one you're talking about.
So like less than 24 hours.
Okay, eating window. Okay. So you're not talking about a daily eating window. You're talking about
a daily eating window, which is typically less than 24 hours.
Yeah, that's normally what I call intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
If I don't eat for 2 days, I call that an extended fast.
Exactly. Yeah.
If I eat every 24 hours, I call it intermittent fasting or one meal a day or whatever.
Yeah. So I'm a big proponent of it.
So are you talking pretty small, like 2 hour eating windows, 4 hour?
So it depends. Yeah, it depends on the patient. It depends on if they're diabetic or not, or if they're healthy or not. So people,
I think if you're not a professional athlete, I would say that you don't need to eat. You don't need to eat more than an 8 to 10 hour window max.
Yeah. And so people are like, no, I need to eat. I need to eat or otherwise I get shaky. And part of that is because their bodies are used to using carbs or sugars that they eat from their diet for fuel. And so you get these highs and lows.
Okay. Have you heard of Dr. Cahill?
No.
Okay. So Dr. Cahill, I think he passed away, but he did some crazy research on fasting before.
Did he die away from like low blood sugar now?
No. So he did some crazy, he was just old. He did a lot of experiments in the like 50s, I think it's 50s and 60s prior to International Review Board.
Okay.
So that you didn't have to like run your experiments by anybody, you just did them. You know, you got someone to agree to it and then you did it. So he did a lot of fasting stuff, which really honestly for have you done an extended fast?
I haven't done an extended fast. The longest that I've gone is 22 hours.
Okay.
But again, based on my health and like I'm relatively healthy, and so. But I will say that the more research that is coming out, I will do an extended fast sometime in my near future.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a couple 2-day, a couple 48-hour. I've done a 3-day, and I made it almost to 4 days. I made it to like 88 hours or something like that.
And like, so there's different types of fast. There's like
0 calorie.
Okay,
coffee,
so just
tea,
water.
Coffee, tea.
Okay.
Yeah, 0 calorie. No, I couldn't do it without the stimulants.
Yeah.
Coffee, tea, and smokeless tobacco. That's what got me through. But yeah, actually day 3 is actually not that hard. What usually ends up happening is some stressful event comes up or some deadline comes up at work, like right when you're in the middle of your fast.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh.
Yeah.
But okay, so what we were talking about fasting. But yeah, so kind of just a different thing on fasting real quick is I really like the psychological aspect of it. When you go 4 days or almost 4 days, is my case, without eating, and you're kind of fine. Like you don't have any problems.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of your listeners were just like, fuck that, like because it's a different concept, you know.
I remember Cahill.
Yeah.
So he would take these people and fast them, and measure all their blood work and everything.
Yeah.
Measure their ketones, measure their glucose. He was very interested in those two things. And then just to see what would happen, he would give a little bit of insulin to the people that were fasting, just to drive their glucose like down even further. Mm-hmm. And these people, he got them down into the 20s.
And they were fine, right?
Asymptomatic.
Because their body is running on ketones.
Yes.
Yep. It's a different energy source. And so
you go, so someone who's not familiar with the ketogenic diet, even a doctor who's not familiar with ketogenic diet, if you say, hey, is there any way someone can be asymptomatic with a 28, and I'm talking 28 milligrams per deciliter, like American standards, can they be asymptomatic at 28? And the answer would be no, they'd be in a coma.
Per my medical school training, the answer would be no.
No, they're in a coma.
They're in a coma, exactly, because that has been our experience. But again, there are people like with Dr. Cahill?
Cahill, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It is possible. And I know that now because of the more extended research that I'm doing now that I'm out in practice. And so the thing with medical knowledge, there is about a 10 to 15 year lag as far as what research, as far as going into the standard practice.
And it makes sense though, because this is a great example. My friend of mine who decided he wanted to, and he did this, I think 3 years ago, he started eating, because I did a blog post on it, and he read it, and he's like, tell me more. So he read 2 blog posts I had written. He read a couple other things. I wrote like a personalized email that was, probably 3 pages. We had conversations about it. And then a while later, he ends up in the hospital, hyponatremia.
Oh, where his sodium was low?
Yeah.
Hyponatremia, yeah.
Natremia? Okay, yeah. And I was like, dude, what's up, man? You weren't like... You weren't following the thing. Oh no, my doctor told me I needed to reduce my sodium intake. And I'm like, you can't mix and match these things.
Yeah.
Like I've told you multiple times, like you've got to consume, a good amount of sodium, probably 3,000 milligrams minimum when you're like on ketogenic diet, because you just flush it out.
Exactly. And so a lot of...
But anyways, the point being, you can't just start like mixing knobs. Like you need to know the impact on other things.
Yeah. And that's why it would be, if you don't have a lot of experience in it and you're interested in your health, ideally you would find a healthcare professional that knows, or at least done some research on the type of diet that you're interested in or something like that, because of those effects. Because the ketogenic diet especially initially will have a diuresis effect, and you will lose electrolytes, specifically sodium and potassium. So you do need that, otherwise you will end up in the hospital.
Or at least feel really crappy. It makes the keto flu way worse to not have adequate sodium intake. So Well, okay. So what else? I mean, what other kind of general recommendations do you make? I mean, to patients, to non-patients, to.
So I do think, even if you are healthy or you think you're healthy, get a blood work panel, not just the basic panel, but a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, like the inflammatory markers, the advanced lipid panels, some of the genetic markers. So I know nowadays there's a lot of talk about MTHFR, and a lot of the stuff you don't even need a doctor to order. Like I actually just ordered something.
I'm heterogeneous.
Yeah. So you have
MTHFR.
trouble you have trouble methylating folic acid, which folic acid is important for the neurotransmitters in our brains and for multiple processes in our body.
Well, so folic acid is a synthetic form.
It's the synthetic form.
So you want folate.
Yeah, and so if you have this defect, you actually need the active form because your body can't methylate it. Your body can't change it from the synthetic form to the
methyl tetrahydra.
Yeah. MTHF.
Reductase. Yeah, MTHFR.
Yeah.
Otherwise known as a motherfucking gene.
Yeah. So if it's as simple as taking a methylated form of folic acid. You will sleep better. Yeah. You will not be as depressed or anxious. You'll feel better overall.
A friend of mine got off her antidepressants.
Exactly. And it actually has a protective effect on cardiovascular events and actually cancer too. And so you'll see if you cannot methylate, that is bad. Okay.
Yeah, I think the variant that I have, the is, so I don't have the homogeneous variant, which is like super
really
bad
form. Yeah.
I have the heterogeneous, but it's a double variant. Yeah. So I have both variants, but not two alleles of each.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a 70% reduction in my ability to methylate.
So knowing that would be good for the person. And so
I
you can
take prenatals.
Yeah. A lot of prenatals are actually having the methylated form of folic acid in now. Thank goodness. When I was pregnant with Max 4 years ago, that was hard to find. But now you can just order it on Amazon. It's everywhere now. And so there's tests out there that you don't even need a doctor for. So 23andMe is one of the ones. I actually just ordered a test off of Amazon for me. I think it's called Tell Me Gen. It's a company based out of Spain, but it looks at, again, the DNA.
And the 23andMe goes on sale pretty often. It goes on sale like twice a year.
Like Prime Day, I think it just had. It was,
yeah, Prime Day was $99. Yeah. And then they'll usually do a Black Friday deal, and then they'll sometimes do a Christmas deal.
Yeah, so you can get it for less than $100 now. But Tell Me Gen is the one that I ordered, and it has like way more than the 23andMe, and it has the
the diagnosis,
or as far as the genetic,
measure more genes.
It measures more genes, so there's
really?
At least 330 as far as what they have. It says 330 plus, and so it'll measure. It'll tell you what genetic predispositions you have to certain things and how your body metabolizes certain things. So I got it because I'm interested to see, if it tells me what sort of diet is going to be better for me, as well as knowing like my cancer risk and things like that. But something that patients might want to know, or people might want to know, is how their body reacts with certain medications. And so this test will actually have like the pharmacogenetics of how their body metabolizes certain medicines.
So I think one of the things with 23andMe is they got in trouble with the FDA, and so they've had to remove a lot of their diagnosis. Yeah. But you can still download your entire sequence, and I know it's based on whatever chip they're using. They have different chips, and so they don't measure they don't map every single gene. There's some that they leave off, but you can. And actually, so I was reading that you could download it and you could plug it in other places, but you don't even have to do that. There's like APIs now. So you go to these third-party websites and they say, would you like to analyze your data? And you say, yeah. And it just basically redirects you. You log in and then, so I can't remember the names of them, but I mean, you can just Google them. I've gone to probably 5 different, and they all kind of specialize in something different. Some are, very focused around methylation. Some are longevity, looking at FOXO3 and things like that. But
Does it cost anything with these third-party sites?
Some of them are free. Some of them will give you like basic information. If you want advanced information, you pay. But I don't think I paid more than like $10 or $12.
Yeah.
And some of them are just like, if you like it, then give us money on PayPal, donate, or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
And so it's interesting. Honestly, I think this is the way that the future of medicine is moving towards. So epigenetics, the study of your genes and the reaction to the environment, whether that's food, whether that's stress, whether that's anything, the interaction with the environment. And so, so some people are like, I don't want to know if I, am at a higher risk for, say, pancreatic cancer or something like that. But in my mind, like, if there's something that you can do to potentially keep that gene from turning on, like, why wouldn't you want to know, And so again, it's everybody's individual preference. But I want to know because I want to be around for my kids.
Well, and I think,
and so here, sorry to interrupt you,
go ahead. But
this is just, I am seeing more and more cancers in younger and younger people. And so my person that I was in residency with, they were a year behind me, but her sister just got diagnosed with metastatic colon cancer to the liver. She's 37, colon cancer. And I don't think anyone else in the family has had this before, but she just had stomach pain, went to the ER and boom. And so it's happening younger and younger now, even before like the screening guidelines start. So colonoscopy, they actually recommend starting at the age of 50. And actually the American Cancer Society has now moved it back to 45 because it's happening more and more often. And so if you know these things, if you know you're going to be more predisposed to breast cancer, you're going to urge your doctor, or at least nudge them, say, hey, I have this predisposing gene. Like, let's do these screening tests earlier so that if something is showing up as far as not just like a microscopic level, but actually pathological tissue right now, you can actually treat it and take care of it and not have it like my friend's sister who is actually in the ICU right now because when they did the colonoscopy, she aspirated. So she has 3 kids. She's a single mom. And so yeah, and so cancers are happening more and more often, and honestly, I think it's our food sources, the genetically modified, the hyper.
I think a lot of environmental toxins.
Exactly, yeah. And so anything that you can do to remove toxins, whether it's through like sweating, like saunas, whether it's through eating foods that are actually more that help eliminate toxins from your body, like do it because you can't avoid every single exposure or toxin.
Yeah, and there's so many now. I mean, like all the phytoestrogens and I mean, you basically get these synthetic estrogens from touching thermal receipts. I mean, I mean, they're everywhere. So I'm not like I'm not trying to sound paranoid or make people paranoid.
I know.
But it's just like, you need to keep an eye on. I mean, we use vinegar in water to clean everything. It's like I would rather have some germs than some Clorox bleach. I would rather put germs in my body. My body knows how to deal with germs than Clorox bleach. I don't know why people are so scared of germs.
You build your immune system. You know, it's all about optimizing your immune system and optimizing your excretion of toxins and so.
Yeah, I feel like I've kind of used that example before. Is I feel like what you're trying to do is trying to dial in that immune system. You don't want it to be too low where you have infectious problems. We haven't. I mean, we don't really talk about infectious disease that much.
No, because I mean, that is one thing that modern medicine is really, really good at is controlling infections. Maybe even too well to the point where now there's going to be a lot of antibiotic resistance and possibly a superbug out there. But yeah, we're really good at the medical community right now is really good at treating infections right now.
But yeah, I mean, then there's a lot of potential byproducts of the antibiotics,
which can lead to chronic disease. So the whole
imbalance of
leaky gut and all that. And so yeah, there's a balance that needs to happen.
Is there a way to test for leaky gut?
There is. I have not had a chance to investigate it yet, but I am going to further my learning in it. And so there are tests out there that can tell how permeable your gut intestine is.
Yeah, because that'd be really interesting. Because I think, I think that's one of the things that is tough about kind of functional medicine or whatever you want to call it, is that it's usually looking at multiple causes, and so it can start to sound a little bit woo woo, right?
Yeah.
Or not woo woo. It's just like it can sound like, hey, you need to get your sleep and do some meditation, and it's like, well, so anytime that there's some things that are really actionable and really concrete and that you can put a test on, I think that's good. So
which is why these advanced cholesterol panels or these advanced tests that we're doing now, I think is great. Including the carotids, because it can actually show the patient, hey, this is going on in your body. This is not just a theory. There is the plaque buildup, or that is your vascular age, so sometimes that is the motivation that the patient needs to make the dietary changes or the lifestyle changes.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, that's one of the things why I think that so many people are successful with a ketogenic diet is because it actually works.
Yeah.
Like when you tell people, hey, eat like this, and then of course, like the first week, a lot of water weight and stuff like that. But even after a month, they're like, I've lost 20 pounds.
And it's relatively easy to do.
I'm going to keep doing this. But people say, well, you gave them this low fat diet, and they didn't stick with it. Well, first of all, it was miserable. Secondly, it didn't do anything. Yeah. They didn't lose any weight. Why would they keep doing it?
They lost weight and then they gained it back. Because what happens on these low-calorie diets or low-fat diets is your metabolism slows down, which with the ketogenic diet or intermittent fasting, it actually resets your metabolism. And so that's why on any diet that you do, you should feel good for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think so typically on a ketogenic diet, people say, a lot of critics of the ketogenic diet say, oh, well, it's just another way to restrict calories. Well, yes, it is. You're going to consume fewer calories. But, if you're losing 3 pounds a week, which is not uncommon, so we're like 3 pounds a week, so that's 10,000 calories. So per day, that's 1,300. So that's 1,300 calories a day that you're not having to put in your mouth, but your body still has access to that energy.
Yeah.
So if you're eating keto and you're only consuming 1,200 calories, you may still be at a 2,500 calorie basal metabolic rate. Don't know for sure, but you don't need to be hungry.
Yeah.
If you get enough protein, enough fat, you won't be hungry.
Yeah. So I like it, and that's been my success. So I've been, like most females or even men, I've tried it all as far as before. Low fat diet, low calorie diet, HCG diet. I think at one point I even took some algae pill in college to help lose weight. But again, I have a 1 year.
I have some of those energy bits. Yeah. They have a lot of B12 in them.
Yeah.
And I like the way they taste.
Those are really good as far as mineral content and stuff. And so I can see where the weight loss effect comes from. But with the type of diet that I'm following now is typically one meal a day. So you have that intermittent fasting in there, and I try to get lots of fats because that will help me be satiated. And I try to eat at least one big thing of vegetables to get my minerals and stuff. And I'll take a supplement, like a phytomulti supplement that has a lot of the green powder, just to get some of those minerals in there, because it's hard to eat 9 or 10 cups of vegetables a day, which is what your body really functions well on. But this is the best that I've felt, and it's been the easiest that I've been able to maintain my weight. And you should do things that feel good for you. And so if you're feeling like crap, maybe that's not what you should do. So,
well, I was going to let you know what is 4:48.
I know I got to go pick up my kid from daycare.
Cool. So. I didn't know exactly how much time you needed, but it's been great. That hour, it's about an hour and a half, just flew by.
Yeah,
so really appreciate you giving me a second chance to do the recording.
This is better. This I kind of got the nervous jitters out of the way with the first one, so this was good.
Yeah, it's good. Once you get into the rhythm, it's good. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and go read a bunch of papers so we have something to talk about next time.
Yeah, and I guess my summary statement for people is, do what you're doing. Get interested in your own health. Test things out on yourself, whether it's a specific diet, whether it's monitoring your blood sugars, or even sleep. just get interested in your own health, because if you're not interested, there's no way you can convince your doctor to be interested. So
good closing words.
Yeah. So thanks.